All right, we ready to get this party started?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, so we shall begin the proceedings. Let's do this. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are so glad you are here with us, and just by showing up, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am pleased to feature two of the creative geniuses behind one of the coolest viral video producers or products on earth. For several years, I've been a huge fan of their work, and today I am thrilled to showcase them and their amazing work. I promise you will leave today smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in jobs throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will address as many of those as possible during the interview. And also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this program free. Thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, Cushmasters brand of CBD products. I also want to introduce a brand new sponsor to our lineup called MedJet. MedJet is the top-rated medical transport and travel security program for people who travel extensively. Insurance will only medvac you to the closest hospital. MedJet gets you to one in your hometown. Let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome Adrienne Maria Dennis. Adrienne has over 25 years of professional entertainment industry experience as a touring artist in event management, music promotions, as an artist manager, working with major national, international corporations such as Disney, Reebok, Red, Converse, Universal, and more. With an MBA, a master's certification in marketing, and a BA in journalism, Adrienne has managed projects and events working with artists such as Sean Puffy Combs, Paris Hilton, Snoop Dogg, Todrick Hall, DMX, and more. Adrienne comes from an entertainment family whose combined professional credits included Gladys Knight, David Foster, Michael Bolton, and more. She's the older sister of Detective Pikachu and Jurassic World star Justice Smith. Following in the footsteps of her musical lineage, she toured, performed, and was featured in numerous videos as a professional dancer, working with such notable artists as Janet Jackson, Madonna, the Rolling Stones, Rihanna, Natasha Bedingfield, and more. Adrienne volunteered as a performing arts educator and choreographer for after-school programs, where she created a nationally recognized youth dance team called Urban Extreme, who starred in Disney Channel's Make Your Mark. She also sits on the board of directors for Love My Neighbor Foundation, a nonprofit established to assist unhoused individuals. And welcome, Adrienne. So glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And joining Adrienne as today's special guest is Mark Johnson. Mark is a Grammy award-winning producer and engineer and award-winning film director. For the past 20 years, he has worked with world-renowned producers in music, film, television, and with musical artists such as Paul Simon, Jackson Browne, Keith Richards, Jimmy Buffett, Sarah Bareilles, Bono, Robbie Robertson, Los Lobos, Ringo Starr, and many more. In 2005, he earned a Contemporary Blues Album of the Year Grammy as producer and engineer of the Keb' Mo' album, Keep It Simple. In hopes of showcasing musical talent on the streets, Mark parlayed his musical knowledge and technical skills to turn his vision into what is now known as Playing for Change, a multimedia movement created to inspire, connect, and bring peace to the world through music. Mark has recorded and filmed music around the world in over 45 countries and has dedicated his life to connecting the world through music. Playing for Change is the 2019 recipient of the prestigious Polar Music Prize, often referred to as the Nobel Prize of Music. Such icons as Norman Lear, Chris Blackwell, and Howard Schultz have supported Playing for Change, and the PFC movement continues to grow one heart and one song at a time. Please allow me to welcome these two rock stars to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, Adrienne.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tom. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Adrienne. Great to see you.
Good to see you, too. So with all of that being said, and everything I've done, I'm also the communications and content manager for the lovely foundation and organization Playing for Change. And we have the co-founder, Mark Johnson, here interviewing, and we're just going to delve into 20 years of Playing for Change history. Mark, 20 years you've been doing this. How incredible is that? Well, let's just start at the very beginning of it all. I think for those who aren't familiar with it, that's always a good place to start. Mark, how did Playing for Change come about? How did you birth the idea, and what motivated you to start this movement?
Well, thank you. And again, I just want to thank Tom so much for this opportunity. It's such an honor to be here. You know, Playing for Change was born out of the idea that no matter how many things in life divide us, they're never going to be as strong as the power of music to bring us back together again. And, you know, it took me a couple of different stages in my life to come to that realization. Originally at the University of New Hampshire, where I went to college, I was an interpersonal communication major. So what we would learn is, you know, how do people make sense of the world? How do they create their identity? And what role does culture play in their society? You know, so I just had this really objective way of getting to look at the world and seeing all these different, you know, cultures living in different ways. And, you know, so I was always interested in humanity, not just in my local town or whatever. I was interested in everybody. So then I needed to get a job. And at the University of New Hampshire, there was an ad in the paper for live sound engineer, no experience necessary. And I was the only one that went to the interview. So I got the job and continued to record and mix, you know, just coffee houses and bands and bars and stuff like that for a couple of years, but just kind of fell in love with being around music. So I knew I wanted to spend my life around music. When I graduated, I got a job at the Hit Factory in New York City. It was one of the biggest studios in the world. And I remember going back and forth for my interviews and going in a suit and everything. And I finally get the job, and he says, okay, you got the job. It's $5 an hour, you know, and you're going to work over 100 hours a week, and that's how you'll survive. But I loved it. And while I was at the Hit Factory, it was an interesting time because it was the late 90s. And when you start out recording music, you know, at the Hit Factory, there's so many kinds of musicians that would come through. So one day I would get to work with Biggie Smalls. And then another day I would work with a 70-piece orchestra. And then another day I would work with Paul Simon. And when you record people's music, you're there for their happiest moment of their life, you know. So I would see these people so excited. And then I would realize that when they go home, they go to completely different worlds. But if they could see the world, or they could see each other the way I get to see them, they would probably all be best friends, because they have so much more connection than they would even know. And I got to see that. So I started realizing, wow, music is really a great connector. It doesn't matter what kind of music. And then I was on my way to work one day in a subway in New York City, and there were two monks painted all in white with robes on in the subway. And there was always street music, and I was into it. But on this day, I came into the platform of the subway, and it was packed. Nobody was getting on the train. And I looked around, and I just heard this incredible music, and I don't know what language they were singing in. And I imagine most people didn't know the language. But I looked around, and I saw an elderly woman next to a little girl. And then I saw a homeless man next to a businessman, and everybody so connected. And then when the music ended, you know, everybody got on the train and they went their separate way. But I kind of had this epiphany, like two things. One, when the music played, the things that made everybody different, it seemed to disappear. And then the second thing was that the best music I heard in my life was on the way to the studio and not in the studio. So then I realized, oh, I could spend my life in the studio, but I'm never going to record whatever that magic just was. So I decided, what if I brought the studio to the streets and to the subways and to the people? And instead of, at that time in history, it was like every time I'd see a documentary on street music, it had terrible sound. So I thought, what if I bring the same exact equipment we use with Paul Simon out into the streets? So originally, I think that was the day that the Playing for Change idea was born, which was to bring the studio to the people, record them, film them with cameras, and really kind of learn what role does music play in society. And that kind of, led us in the direction of going out into the streets and creating something that was really from the people for the people, that was just going to go. We didn't know what kind of musicians we'd find or anything, but just that we were going to go show up and we were going to see what kind of great music and talent there was across America. So that led to the beginning of Playing for Change, really the idea. A few years later, maybe like a year later, I moved out to California to record as a recording engineer for Jackson Browne. And when I moved out here, that's when I met the other co-founder of Playing for Change, Whitney Cronky Silverstein, amazing woman who's been a supporter and a partner with me now for 20 years. She runs all of the Playing for Change Foundation. And she was really into street art and I was into street music. So we just decided, why don't we, team up together? Let's build a recording studio. At the time, I think it was powered with golf cart batteries and cameras, and let's hit the streets. And we made our first film, which was called Cinematic Discovery of Street Musicians, which was recorded from Los Angeles to New York City on the streets. And I remember she would say to me, we got to do something more than just record them on their own. How are we going to connect everybody and make a through line? And I would just lie in bed at night and wonder, what could we do? And then it finally just hit me like, why don't we just make songs across America, where I'll record a guitar player here in Venice Beach, and then I'll record a guitar player in Harlem, have them on the same song playing and trading riffs back and forth. So we created two songs. One was called Playing for Change Blues, and the other one was just called Song Across America. And they were just original songs. And that's when we started realizing how well this concept works, where people can be thousands of miles apart from each other in their natural environment, outside, where you can see a little bit of the world they live in, and you can see them in their most comfortable place and record them and film them on the same songs. So I think that really gave us the idea that, wow, this works. And, let's continue on with this concept and try to take it around the world. And then that's when I was out here working with Jackson Browne, I was trying to think about, for our second film, taking it around the world. The film was called Peace Through Music. And the idea was, well, what would be a great song to start this concept? And I had been listening to the John Lennon version of Stand By Me. For some reason, it had come on a couple of times. I'd probably on my iPod at the time. And I just thought, wow, that'd be a great song. And then one day I was walking in the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and I heard a street musician named Roger Ridley singing the song Stand By Me. And I remember I was about a block or two away from him, and I ran over because his voice was so powerful. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is the perfect musician and the perfect song to take around the world. So I approached him when he had a set break, and I said, hey, I want to record you and film you playing Stand By Me. I'm going to take it around the world, put headphones on musicians, add them to the song. And he looked at me like I was crazy, but he said, hey, if you come back, I'll play the song. So about an hour later, I had a camera and my recording equipment. And I remember saying, Roger, why are you on the streets? I mean, you sound like Otis Redding, with a voice like that. Why are you on the street? And he said, man, I'm in the joy business. I come out to bring joy to the people. And that really moved me. Maybe the most talented singer I'd ever heard in my life. His favorite thing about music was to go out and bring joy to other people. He didn't talk about business or anything like that. It was all about the joy business with him. Mm-hmm. So I think that was really the start of what people would know now as Playing for Change, kind of launched with the Stand By Me video around the world. So those were kind of the series of events that led to creating Playing for Change.
That's an amazing story. Like, it is truly amazing. And I love that I'm in the joy business. It doesn't get much better than that. It's so simple and yet so moving and effective. Just, I'm in the joy business. Like, I think that the world can use a lot more joy. So I love that. What would you say, like, would you say that that's PFC's mission statement, is that you guys are in the joy business? Like, what drives you now as a whole movement? What would you say is your mission statement?
Yeah, I would imagine the mission statement would be the same thing it's been for 20 years, which is connecting the world through music. Because when you get to see the world through the lens of music and art, then there's always joy in there. But it's not just joy, it's also super human, you know, and
Right.
everybody can start to see all the connections that we have all over the world. You know, everybody wants the same thing in life, you know, love and peace and happiness for their family and
Right.
opportunity and hope. And so it starts to become something where when you connect the world through music, a lot of the things that divide us, they disappear, you know,
Right.
and people become really the only group we're ever all going to be a part of is the human race, you know, and music brings us back to that. And in fact, it was invented by people for this purpose. You know, you go back and I've had the luck of traveling to so many places and seeing so many reasons why people play music, and to connect hearts has always been like the most fundamental reason that music was invented, and it has that
Right.
power. So when you connect the world through music, you know, I think you give people an opportunity to see the world in a new way, to create the reality that we're all here together. We're the group we've been waiting for. You know, this is our time as a human race to unite. And technology brings people together, and we can now learn about places that are far away in a couple of seconds. And, you know, there's no more separation, you know, and I think that when you get to see the world through music, you get to be really connected, and it gives you a chance to see the world in a new way.
Right. It's truly a universal language. I love, there's something that we always say, you say in particular, about changing hearts one song at a time. And I love that. It's the simplicity of it, again, and so effective and powerful in that statement, that just a song and the frequency, you know, of music can move people and shift and transform hearts. That is such a wonderful and powerful thing. And I love that. I love that. And I see people in the comments too, like, music connects, and it's about community and uplifting and all of those words. And that's truly what PFC is about.
Yeah.
Yeah, why I'm on board. It's a bigger purpose, right? Like, it's all about a greater purpose. It's, of course, the focus is humanity, but there are so many people tuning in that are in the industry, whether it be producers or engineers, artists themselves. Can you talk about just a little bit about what it takes to create these songs around the world, like your recording process? How do you choose the musicians and artists that you do? And how does that really work? And how long does this take? This is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's been an evolution since the beginning, but to take people through how it all started, because it's been really kind of the same concept over time. Technology has evolved, thankfully, over time. So in the beginning, I was using golf cart batteries, and everything was really heavy. And then I switched to car batteries, but then you could travel to a Himalayan mountaintop to record somebody and find out the battery was actually never charged. So eventually it led to little battery packs that I use now, but I've used the same microphones and the same microphone preamps from the beginning, the same stuff we would work with with Paul Simon, as I said, at the Hit Factory. So it's a really mobile studio. The technical side of this is, for example, with Stand By Me, I would just show up with Pro Tools on a laptop, and I would, with cameras, and I would record Roger Ridley singing Stand By Me, and he would play it from the beginning to the end. And he had a direct pickup in his guitar so that I could take his voice out at any time and still have the rhythm guitar playing. So that gave me a chance to then go, for example, really the way this works is just try to pick as many diverse cultures as possible and put them together. So you never know what instrument you're going to get next. You never know what performer, and you never know how it's going to work. So for that song, the first thing we did after filming Roger was we wanted to kind of veer off of street music as the only theme and make this more about all musicians, any musician, right? So the next place we went was to the Zuni Native American Reservation. The Zuni, it's outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We were invited by the tribal elders. I had written them a couple of letters and asked them if we could add some of their musicians playing a drum to Stand By Me. And after a couple of letters, I was invited to the reservation. And, you know, the thing about the Zuni is they're the oldest Native American tribe. They trace back so many thousands of years. And, you know, for them, music is sacred. And it plays such an integral part of their tradition, connecting to their ancestors. So this brought another depth to the song, you know? So we had Roger playing on it. And then the next thing added was a Native American tribe of 10 drummers sitting around a drum in the desert playing on the backbeat. And then we had just Roger and a Native American tribe. And then Hurricane Katrina happened. And then the idea was, wow, we got to go to New Orleans, and my favorite music city in the world, really, and go down there and see what's going on. And when I was down there, there was a street musician I'd seen a few times named Grandpa Elliott, one of my heroes. And Grandpa was actually singing Amazing Grace a cappella on the street. And I remember coming up to him and talking about the project, and, you know, he loved the idea. So we put headphones on Grandpa. And then that's when I was able to mute Roger's vocal for the second verse and let Grandpa sing the second verse. Then I bring Roger back in for the chorus and they start singing together. So suddenly now we had Roger Ridley and Grandpa Elliott and the Zuni Nation playing together. And it was just the three of them. And then from there, it was about, okay, let's start picking places far away from each other. And one of the next places that we had chose was South Africa, because South Africa have some of the greatest choral singers in the world. And, you know, I had learned a lot about South Africa when I was working with Paul Simon, and also had learned a lot from Jackson Brown. So, but I didn't know anybody we were going to actually go record or film. But my brother had given me a book called A Day in the Life of Africa. And in this book was 100 pictures taken on the same day across the continent of Africa. And one of the pictures from the book he had framed for me. And this picture was musicians playing in a ghetto, and everything they were playing looked like it was broken, but they just looked like they had so much soul. And I remember thinking like, wow, I want to find these guys. But back then, you know, there wasn't so easy to just find anything on the internet. So I did a little research and I could find that the leader of the band was the bass player, and his name was Pokey. So my dream was to get Pokey to play bass on Stand By Me. So we went to South Africa and we started traveling around the Johannesburg and Durban and Cape Town and the different townships. And when I got to Cape Town, because I knew Pokey was in that area, I would just ask all the musicians that I'd record, does anybody know Pokey? And nobody knew Pokey. But then one day I was recording Joe and the Ganja Muffins. And Joe, who plays a kazoo from the Ganja Muffins, stood up so enthusiastically and said, I know Pokey, he's my best friend. I'll take you to meet him. So we get in this van and we drive from Cape Town through all the townships. And coming from America, I'd never seen anything like that. It was just people living in tin shacks and just utter poverty. And at that time, it was a really high rate of HIV in the townships as well. So it was a lot of despair. And remember, Pokey's been on my wall, this picture, for a couple of years. So I feel like I know him and I love him, but he has no idea who I am. So we show up into his little home and we get out of the van and he comes out and he's all surprised. I don't know what he thought was happening. Like maybe he'd won the lottery or something. Here are these people with cameras getting out of a van. And I just run up to him to like give him a hug. And he looked all confused. And I was like, oh, what am I doing? I don't even know this guy. So then what I would do is I would carry an iPod video at the time of where Stand By Me was. So you have the Zuni Nation, Roger, and Grandpa. And I gave it to him with headphones. And while he's watching it, I walked in his backyard. And it was the saddest place I'd ever seen. It felt like death and horrible sadness. And there were little kids and there were mothers, and some of them were really, really ill. And I remember I had this moment where I said to myself, wow, we've come too far. This is not a good idea. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. And so I go back in to tell Pokey, hey, we're sorry, we're going to leave. But he'd watched the video and he was so excited that he had called all his friends to come over. And he said, no, man, you're not going anywhere. Set up your equipment. So we start to set up the equipment. And then I remember when his friends came and they started to play, it was like an exorcism. Like it went from the saddest place I'd ever seen in my life to the happiest place I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, women screaming and dancing and little kids coming out. And it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I realized the only thing that changed from the saddest place to the happiest place was that they played music.
Right.
And that's when I realized we didn't come too far. This is exactly what we needed to learn. And in that experience, Pokey then played the bass on Stand By Me. And I remember saying to him, like, what can we do to give back to you for this? This is so amazing, you helping us. And he said, man, why don't you build a music school for these kids? Maybe instead of the next kid being a gangster, they're the next Nelson Mandela. And maybe the only thing that made the difference is somebody believed in them. So, that hit me really hard. And in fact, his home, that backyard was the home of our very first Playing for Change music school. And that also gave me this idea of one heart, one song at a time, because this isn't about millions of people at once. This is about one person at a time. How can you look them in the eyes, and how can you tell them that you see them and that you understand and that you care and that you feel something for them and that we're all in this together? That happens with the music. So I realized that because of the context of how we were getting to see the world through the lens of music, we were opened up to all these places that otherwise would never have invited us in. I mean, right after Guguletu, we went to Soweto, South Africa. At the time, it was the murder capital of the world. And I remember the same trick of these guys came over and I show them the iPod video and they come back, or another guy comes back and he says, hey man, just so you know, those were the gangsters. And normally they would have robbed you or killed you and taken your stuff. But after seeing the video, they told me to tell you they got your back. You're safe while you're here. And so I know it was naive, but music has that power, and so does intention. So if your intention is to connect and inspire and be a part of something with people, they feel that. And so it gives you opportunities to do things you otherwise would never be able to do. And I'm getting into all this just to explain, every song has so much magic just in the way that the people get to come together in their own stories, in their own locations. So then, Stand By Me, from there, we went to, I think we went to the Himalayan mountains and recorded Tibetan musicians. And for them, it's music for enlightenment. And, so these songs kind of give you an ability to see the role of music around the world and connect parts of that together in each of the songs. So they're not just like studio recordings where you shut the door and you bring in the people you want. This is like, you never know who you're going to get. It's going to be outside, and it's just going to be a spontaneous thing where, you work with the people. One phenomenon in a production side that comes out of this is it's a unique thing in music, but people actually listen more and they play less on songs around the world. In studios, a lot of times people just play, but here people know they're just a part of something much bigger than themselves. So it gives them a chance to really listen, find what role could their instrument or their voice play in this global, ensemble. So it's been an amazing thing to be able to travel, record and film musicians and not know who's going to be next. And each musician just hears whoever had played before them. So when Pokey played the bass, he heard Roger Grandpa and the Zuni drum. And then the next musician and the next musician would hear whoever had played before them. So whoever plays last, they get to hear a whole track, and whoever plays first is either hearing nothing or a metronome. And that kind of set the stage for songs around the world.
Yeah. Well, so actually, I think that's a perfect segue into actually showing the audience what Playing for Change does and these songs around the world. So I know that it was shared with many of the viewers, one of our videos, The Wait, featuring Robbie Robertson and Ringo Starr. we'd like to share our latest video, which actually has done tremendously in terms of viewership and just response. And perhaps some of you guys have seen it, but it's When the Levee Breaks, featuring John Paul Jones, Stephen Perkins, Derek Trucks, Susan Tedeschi, and a plethora of people from around the country. Mark, can you talk a little bit about When the Levee Breaks to segue and what it took to make this phenomenal video? I mean, I'm working for PFC and I'm looking at the process and I was going, this is incredible. This is insane. Even from the inside looking out, I was like, this is incredible. So can you just kind of talk about, before we show that to everyone, what it took to make that and how you got everyone on board? And just,
sure.
how big that was.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big jump from so Stand By Me was the first song around the world, and When the Levee Breaks was the most recent one. So we've had about 15 years of experience. And this song was made in partnership with the United Nations and an event that we put on called Peace Through Music, a global event for the environment. So we were trying to choose songs that could spark inspiration and connection to the environment. And so one of the great songs of all time was When the Levee Breaks. I think it was originally written by Memphis Minnie or performed by her back in the early 1900s. Then Led Zeppelin turned it into the rock and roll classic. But the thing about the songs we choose is that it's not all about the joy business. It's not all about connection in the sense of how good things are going. Sometimes we also have to look at how bad things are going and then use conviction and perseverance, because those are really strong qualities in music too. Music can make you smile, but it can also pick you up and make you feel more inspired to do something with your life. And I feel like that's what that song always represented to me. It has an urgency in it, and it has a lot of conviction, obviously. So we thought we would try that around the world. And for us, that song was produced with myself and my music producing partner, Sebastian Robertson, who is Robbie Robertson's son. And he's an amazing musician in his own right and plays guitar in the video. And we just started dreaming up, all different, a big part of the show was to use songs to then open up people's minds to indigenous wisdom around the world, because indigenous communities are so connected to nature. And I just thought it would be great if we could learn from them. And also if we could provide a context where the way we get to learn from them is through popular culture too, something that we could be familiar with. So that song, we ended up working with one of the first singers was a suggestion from John Paul Jones, and her name was Ellie. And she actually is a reindeer herder from northern Norway, way up in the snow-capped valley there. And then also Mihi Rangi, who is an amazing Maori activist and musician. And she had just been telling us a story of a river in New Zealand that had just been given personhood, like it had been given the same rights as people. And so we started to see these people are working magic around the world, doing incredible things for the environment. Let's put them together on the song. We approached Stephen Perkins about playing the drum parts from Jane's Addiction. And then John Paul Jones, we didn't think he would do it, but we just sent him an invitation with a hope, and he had gone back and he'd watched other videos we'd done. And he just said, yeah, I want to do this. I'll be a part of it. So once we got John Paul Jones and Stephen Perkins, we knew we had kind of the perfect modern day rhythm section. Mihi Rangi and Ellie were two incredible, like ethereal voices that we could add to this thing. Then we were able to reach out to Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks and get them to play on the song. I'd also been working with Mickey Hart and his Planet Drum group on drummers all around the world together. That's where I got to meet the legendary talking drum player Sikaru from Nigeria, and he agreed to play on it. So it's just started to take shape. And I'll just let you guys check out where it ended up. So if we could play When the Levee Breaks.
When the Levee Breaks, Tom.
Give me 1 second, folks.
Awesome. Okay.
You guys are in for a huge treat.
It is indeed.
And I realize it's a little bit long, but it's worth it.
It definitely is. Mm-hmm.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Sit back and enjoy.
Wow. Even watching it again, I still be like, ooh, chills. It's just such an incredible video from start to finish. It's like really powerful.
Yeah, and
Um,
the funnest thing about him is just that you never know who's going to be next. And we try not to make everything be exactly like the original, try to make it different. You know, all the songs that we do, if they're covers, they're just a tribute to the artist and to the song, but never trying to be the same. You know,
right.
so by including a musician named Buffalo Nichols, who's now played on Colbert and is touring with Kev Mo, but Buffalo was here in my backyard, and then we filmed him also in Austin before any of that happened. And just seeing, you know, great talent that maybe people hadn't heard of, and then you get to put them in the video next to other artists that are more famous or well-known, and people see how well they all fit together. I think that's part of the magic. Merman's Mosengo on the harmonica. He's one of my best friends, and he's in the Playing for Change band and been in a bunch of our videos. But he's a musician from the Congo that left during the war in the late 90s. And when you see musicians that have been through so much, carry so much light and joy in them, I just think they become great examples for the rest of us about perseverance and about, you know, how music can really lift people up no matter how dark the situation is. And that's why a song like this was important for the environment, because we're facing a climate crisis, but it's the only way to solve it is together. You know, it has to be all of us. We need everybody. And that's what I think, you know, when you put people in the context of music, people can feel that.
I agree. How long, just on average, does it take you to create a song around the world, something like this from start to finish, between production and filming and everything?
This one was probably about a year, maybe a little bit under a year, but Stand By Me was about 3 years.
Woo!
You know, a lot of the earlier videos took years to make, literally just go travel 20 hours to add a talking drum and a tambourine. And then another 20 hours to, you know, to add somebody else. And, you know, it was definitely a brick by brick experience, but all the musicians are recorded and filmed live wherever you see them. Most of the time they're outside. So yeah, I mean, so it's a project about showing up, you know. You show up. A lot of times the best musicians I would find were because we were tired, and instead of going back to the hotel, we would push out there, and you make this one, you walk around one extra corner, and all of a sudden that's where you hear it, and that's where you find it. And that's what life is like, you know. So I think it's, even though they take a while, they're obviously a labor of love.
Yeah, you find these like diamonds in the rough, or these gems at every turn. It's such a invaluable experience that you can, these people that may be relatively unknown in other parts of the world are getting these opportunities, like you said, to play with like a John Paul Jones or something like that. And it's just incredible for everybody to see that. You know, I think especially like when you're in your own country or your own situation, you're in kind of sometimes in your own bubble. And then to see like a Miharangi and stuff, you're like, well, like I know so many, you know, comments where is this voice? Is like, where has her voice been? And she's known, but it's like the fact that you guys have created a platform, you know, just another avenue to get these faces and these voices out there, I think is incredible. You know, that people are like, where's this person been my whole life? I mean, that's super awesome. And speaking of that, like you mentioning mermans and stuff, I just definitely want to segue into, there's so many moving components for PFC. And one of those, we saw some of the artists in When the Levee Breaks and some of the other Songs Around the World videos, but PFC has the Playing for Change band, which like Mermans and Jason were in. Can you talk about a little bit about what brought about the PFC band, how that shaped it, and all of the different musicians from different countries in that band?
You know, after that story of Pokey playing bass on Stand By Me, that was a moment where I think we realized that none of this means anything if we're not giving back to the people.
Yes.
So that's when we created a separate 501c3, the Playing for Change Foundation. We currently have 17 music schools around the world. They're all free. They're all run by their own communities. They're amazing. And then we connect all the kids together. And so that kids get to see the world through the lens of music and art. And in order to build our first school in South Africa, we wanted to assemble a bunch of the musicians who had never met in person. They had just met in the videos to come play a benefit concert. So that was when we first invited a bunch of the different musicians, and that led to the Playing for Change band. It was formed in 2008. So now, you know, they've toured in over 25 countries. We played at Glastonbury, they played at the White House and all over the world. And it's a mix of, you know, 11 or 12 musicians from 11 or 12 countries. And what's amazing about it is that in the beginning, you know, each of these artists are great in their own right. And then they decide to put aside their ego, join this band where none of them will even speak the same language. And then what happens is what I had hoped would happen. It's like the great experiment, but eventually world music becomes the world playing music together. You know, when I was growing up, it was anything that wasn't English or British or American was world music. But world music really is when the world play together, because that's when every different experience and different way of seeing the life and different way of seeing music, they all come together and create something bigger than themselves. So that's really been the essence of the Playing for Change band, a tangible example right in front of you on the stage, you know, of all what happens when the world comes together. And a lot of it, you know, has been magic to see. Grandpa Elliott, you know, is, like I'd mentioned, is one of my heroes. He had recently passed away, but Grandpa, you know, had been performing on the streets in New Orleans for about 65 years. Then we met him and he started touring the world. And when he would play in countries like Brazil, he could play for 20,000 people and they would treat him like Elvis. I mean, he had billboards and standing ovations. And one of the most amazing, you know, situations ever was seeing him get that love that he'd been giving people every day. He didn't care if you were black, white, rich, or poor. He would be your grandpa and he was going to sing you a song. And then when he finally got to take that to the stage all over the world, it was like the greatest experience of my life. One funny thing just to throw out there, I don't think I ever mentioned this in an interview, but I was thinking a lot about Grandpa, and I saw a picture of him recently. We had toured with Robert Plant, and in Australia, the Playing for Change band, in a couple of stadium shows. And I remember when we got the gig, everybody jumping up and down, oh my God, Robert Plant. And then a few minutes later, Mermans comes over to me with some of the African musicians and they said, hey, Bubba, who is this Robert Plant? And I said, no, from Led Zeppelin. And they said, Led Zeppelin? We don't know. I said, oh my God, these guys have never heard of Led Zeppelin,
Right.
Which was very humbling and cool. But Grandpa Elliott had also never really heard of Led Zeppelin. So when we got to play our first concert in Australia, Robert Plant gave us an hour time slot, which was long for an opening band. And he let us start later, so the stadium would be full. So we ended up getting a standing ovation, and he came into the dressing room, and, you know, Grandpa Elliott was blind, and Robert Plant comes and sits next to him, and he's holding his hand, and he says, hey, man, how am I supposed to go on the stage after you? Grandpa Elliott looks at him and says, well, I wouldn't want to go on after me either. He said, but if you practice, you'll be all right. And I'll never forget Robert Plant's joy on his face. Like, did this guy just tell me to practice? And I just think it just shows the beauty of music, because fame and fortune don't mean anything, you know, but
Right.
heart and soul means everything. And so, you know, that band was able to transcend so many of the traditional forms of success. And then they would go play in children's hospitals and homeless shelters. And when Grandpa would play in children's hospitals, he couldn't see them. So the rest of us would all be in tears by the end of the first song. And then the kids see us crying. So it feels sad. But Grandpa never got sad. He would just stay smiling and singing for the kids. And it's like a magic thing to be able to, you know. So the Playing for Change band, this year we're actually playing in Jazz Fest in New Orleans.
Yes.
So first big gig since prior to COVID. But the whole band is coming together. The musical circus is back in town. And yeah, and so the Playing for Change band is really the tangible example of the whole thing. And I remember reading a Bruce Springsteen quote one time where he said, you know, when you play a concert, you and your audience, you get to rebuild the world you want to live in. You know, and I feel like that's a lot of what this band is about. Like, we don't need a world with racism, sexism. We don't need a world that hurts each other. And we can build the world we all want together. And when you see a global band in front of you with that much talent and conviction, you feel it. You feel like we're going to make it as a human race, you know? And that's what I believe. And that's what that band has really given me the chance to see firsthand.
I love it. I absolutely love it. One thing I do love too, especially when you take the music industry side of things, you know, we also know like just the music business can be sometimes it's like vultures and, you know, the whole 9 yards, it can be crazy. One thing I love about PFC and what you guys do is you really take care of all of the artists, the musicians that are involved. And I know I've seen that question a couple of times, you know, like, you know, do the musicians get paid? Are they just, you guys really like just being a part of it and just seeing how well taken care of everybody is and making sure royalties are paid out and really honoring, you know, just each artist and each, you know, talent, what they do is, it's really inspiring and it's a breath of fresh air from the business side of it too, because we don't see that often in the music industry. You know what I mean? And I think that's so great, especially that you sometimes have relatively unknown artists or someone that you got a street musician like a Roger Ridley or Grandpa Elliott. And, you know, and people get scared, like, you know, do these people, are they in crazy contracts? We know all of this stuff that the music industry does, and PFC doesn't do that. You know, you guys really lift these artists up, give them a platform and give them just due. And that's really heartwarming and a breath of fresh air.
Thank you. I just want to take a second and give a shout out to Norwood, because he wrote there, comes a time when a blind man takes your hand and says, don't you see? And that's from a Grateful Dead song. And I used to use that quote all the time, Norwood, because to me, I feel like it's a magical thing. You know, comes a time when the blind man takes your hand and says, don't you see?
That's a great quote.
But back to the business side of it. When we were first making Stand By Me and all these songs around the world, we didn't know if anyone would ever see it. So we just decided, listen, let's just partner with all the musicians. First of all, every musician ever recorded in any Playing for Change video over 20 years, everybody's paid. Then on top of that, the featured artists are given royalties. And what had happened was when we finished the Stand By Me video, it was all part of a film called Peace Through Music. It premiered at Tribeca Film Festival, and Norman Lear had seen it and had asked to meet with me. And Norman has since come on to be our partner and one of my greatest friends in the world. And one of the first person he played it for was Howard Schultz, who runs Starbucks, and they agreed to sell the album in Starbucks. And so an album of all street musicians was a top 10 of Billboard. And I remember the musicians, all of the different artists in the video, it was all street musicians making all the royalties. And you know, I think that they, you know, since the beginning and counting, you know, other licensing and stuff, have made over millions of dollars for these artists. And then, you know, so that includes Grandpa Elliott, and it includes Roger Ridley, who had passed away after he'd done the recordings. So then it was able to support his widow and help them put their daughter through college. But also the Zulu choir, who had sang on a lot of their early songs. You know, they started a micro loan business for jewelry in their township in South Africa. And that went on to impact, you know, hundreds of people in their own village. So it really was sort of the thing that keeps on giving. You know, by giving to the artists, we got trust, they got opportunities to finally get some, you know, tangible reward for all of their music. And it's just sparked a new way to do business, which was believing in each other, being completely transparent, and realizing that really giving is getting. You know, when you can give something to somebody and it makes their life better, you get so much more out of it. So for me, I think, and plus we wouldn't be here 20 years later if we had tried to make this. But a lot of it was based on a Bob Marley quote. You know, you got to think of the music first, never the money first. If you think of the music first, then the money first, then the music won't be worth the money you make. So we wanted to make something that could stand up, because it's about humanity. It's not about me. It's not about famous or anything, but it's all music. You know, you can be famous, you can be on the street, you can be in an Indian reservation, and you can fit perfectly in the Playing for Change project.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And then just even from that, like you said, having the foundation, so that people know, I know you've mentioned it, but just really delving into this really quick, the difference between the Playing for Change Foundation and Playing for Change, the B Corps. So, just so everyone knows, there are actually two separate entities that work together for the greater good. So Mark, if you want to just kind of delve into, you talked about the music schools and everything, but most people don't know that they're actually two separate interconnecting organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, so playingforchange.com, we make all the songs around the world and tour the band and create all the productions, and is really the sort of the overarching movement. But in order for it to become a movement, it's got to give back to people. So we also have a separate playingforchange.org, which is a 501c3 nonprofit building music and art schools around the world. And then we work together. So our band go and play a lot of benefit concerts, or if we want to build a school in Brazil, the band will go play a show in Brazil, and then all the proceeds will go back to the community. And that's actually how we built a lot of the schools around the world. But the foundation is amazing. It's just about really empowering the future through children, and Playing for Change, the business, is more about supporting grown-up musicians around the world. And then when you put those two things together, that's where the magic happens, because you get an incredible amount of talent, and you get to put it towards something that's going to be bigger than you and transcend. And that's the idea of the foundation. It's the one heart, one song at a time idea that, when we give people hope and we give them instruments, amazing things come out of that.
Right.
They are separate, and they just work together. It's like a legal thing to be separate, but the mission has always been the same. We need everybody.
Yeah. And including that, also just working together, highlighting the series, the PFC series that you have. So things like Mark's Park. So for the 20th anniversary this year, Mark's Park benefits our Playing for Change Foundation. So we actually have an upcoming Mark's Park coming out on the 27th. So you guys stay tuned for that. But the proceeds raised from that will benefit building more music programs in different countries. So,
And all of our schools are free, and they're all run and operated by the community. But guys, there's so many amazing things that come out of this beyond music. It's just that music brings the trust, and it brings the pride. It's what everybody's the most proud of in their culture. So we have a school in Nepal that's about 14 hours from Kathmandu and a 1-hour walk. And you end up in this village. And here we support a group called My Heroes in Life, called the Mother Society. And they travel on foot in the Himalayan mountains, putting on a play to teach the communities how to protect their children and their daughters from the sex slave trade, how to not be given away to false marriages, etc. And, it's not exactly music, but it came out of music. And so what can come out of, something that's really just about connecting hearts is everything can come out of that. Everything that matters comes from that kind of place. And then in West Africa, we have a school in Mali in an ancient village called Karina. And in this village, kind of the home of the blues in this village. And now they have clean water and solar power and light in the maternity ward for the first time in 1,000 years. And it comes because of the music. Right. In Brazil, it's, literally went from one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the world to one of the safest, because the gangsters themselves decided their kids were going to the school and they wanted to take the violence away. I mean, it's amazing stuff that comes out of it. And these are just simple examples, but they're everywhere. So what happens is when you use music, which was invented by people for the purpose of lifting each other up, it's really endless what can come out of it. And I think that's what makes me the most proud, is to know that everything that everybody has put in just keeps giving back.
That's phenomenal. And again, the greater purpose, like that's what it should be. I know we're winding down, but I do want to know, there's quite a few questions saying, what's next for PFC? Like what's on our agenda? So how much can we talk about? We got some really exciting things because it is the 20th anniversary. So guys, I'm relatively new to PFC, right? So I started in November, but I've been fully aware of PFC and all they did because I actually had a cousin that worked for PFC, J. Marie, shout out to J. Marie, who brought me into the situation. And yes, J. Marie, I think she was on here for a second. But so I feel like I came at such an exciting time, 20 years of PFC. Yeah, I dived right in, and it was piece of music, When the Love You Breaks. I was like, whoa, what is this machine? What is this movement? phenomenal. So I'm so excited. So I'm looking to you, Mark. Like, I know what's on our calendar, but what can we share with everyone that's coming up?
The three main parts of the project, right? The songs around the world. We're continuing our partnership with the United Nations and our Peace Through Music event this year, creating a global event for humanity, where we get to use songs around the world, but then drive them to deeper stories so people can start to see the power of music around the world, like I talked about today. Then we also have our Playing for Change Foundation, just continuing to build more music and art schools around the world. And then, like the Stand By Me video, connect all the kids together. So kids in Mali get to meet kids in America through the lens of music and art. And then West Africa doesn't become the home of Ebola virus. It becomes the home of the blues. And people are starting on the home of hip hop, and like reinventing how people see the world is such a big part of what music can do.
Yes.
So we're going to continue to do that all the time, and really excited that the Playing for Change band is finally going to get back together.
Yes.
Get back
May 5th. May 5th.
Yeah, May 5th at Jazz Fest, also May 6th in New Orleans.
Yes.
But if you guys, anybody who wants to learn more and support us, you can come to playingforchange.com. And if you can sign up to become a member, then you really get all the behind the scenes stuff and you get to become on the journey with us. But the great thing about the project really is that it never ends, right? Because there's always more places to record and people to connect and schools to build. So we're just going to take the last 20 years and use that as, the wind in our backs for the next 20.
Yes, super exciting times, amazing stuff coming up. I couldn't have come on at a better time. I know I'm excited, and I'm on the inside, guys. So definitely sign up for, a membership. It does go to supporting the PFC Foundation, as well as helping us create more songs around the world videos and just supporting the music. You get awesome discounts on merch, as well as exclusive content. So we're just jam packing our members area with amazing videos, behind the scenes stuff. So some of the questions you guys have, there's videos for some of these cool things, like behind the songs, deconstructed. So the membership is really valuable, and it goes to actually supporting the music. So like you said, you give and you get. So please definitely go to our website and check that out. And sign up and get our newsletters and just be privy to all of the amazing things coming up. And we even actually have some new community opportunities coming up. I know there's so many people who are like, how can I get involved? And guess what? We have some opportunities for you guys to be involved that we're really excited to share. So Mark, before we wrap, anything else you want to share about, how far you've come and PFC has come, or even just, let's get to you always talk about the human, the person, even you. How has PFC transformed you? We talk about everyone else, but from where you started to where you are now, how have you been transformed?
Yeah, honestly, I think for me, I've been so lucky to go out there and to get to see so many people believe in me and believe in this project and impart different types of wisdom. So for me, I just feel so thankful. I feel more sure now than ever before that music and art are some of the greatest tools we have to connect hearts around the world. Music is, I think, the greatest way to heal broken countries, cultures, and hearts. And at a time where we're such a divided world, we need to focus on the connections. Who cares about the divisions anymore? Let them go. Let's just find the things that are going to bring us back together. And music is one of the greatest ways to give yourself a chance to do that. Forgiveness, whether it's forgiving yourself or other people, comes through music. And then once you do that, there's limitless possibilities. Like, I just believe so much. For me, a lot of it is from the Curtis Mayfield quote at the end of People Get Ready. I believe we're going to make it as a human race. People, I believe. And after 20 years and 60 something countries around the world, I never believe more than I do right now.
Oh, wow. I love it. Someone asked, do you sleep, Mark? Do you sleep? I love it. Well, you know what? I think we couldn't have ended on a better note with what you said. And I appreciate you guys just for taking the time. And it's so funny, even though, again, I work for PFC, I find out something new myself every time I talk to you, Mark, and do these interviews. I walk away going, I didn't know that myself. So thank you for taking the time. And Tom, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Tom.
This was super awesome. Like, and if anybody else has any other questions or anything that just comes to mind, you can go to the website, you can contact us and send us an email. And again, just sign up for the newsletter. There's going to be a plethora of information coming out and new exciting opportunities. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks go to you guys. I'm floored, and I've never made a bigger promise to the audience and have it delivered in spades better than today. I always tell the audience, you will leave today more inspired than you arrived. And I can tell you unequivocally, 100% of the audience here feels exactly that way. So thank you. The work you're doing is incredible. And just keep doing it. And I can't wait to support you. And I know you had a lot of new fans today, and hopefully some financial support will flow in and other kinds of support. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Tom, Adrienne, and thanks to everybody who came to listen,
Yes.
your family.
All right, we're going to sign off, folks. Keep being nice to each other. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.